Okay, good morning. My name is Nicky Wilkins. I head up the customer engagement team here at Symmetry. I'm going to start webinar now. As we said, we start at 11. I can see there are a number of people still queuing through and coming through the GoToMeeting. So I will keep talking while people are settling in and getting sorted. As I say, my name's Nicky Wilkins. I'm going to be your host for this morning's webinar. My role at Symmetry is to work with existing customers and new customers to help people get the most of their finance system. Symmetry produces their finance software package called Bluecube, and Bluecube is used by a large number of FE colleges, HE colleges. We have a third of the market of FE colleges across the UK. We've been going 25 years. I've been with Symmetry 10 years, so it's been an interesting time. And obviously, in the last 18 months, we have seen a huge range of changes, and that's going to be the focus for this morning's webinar. So we have said, there we are. We do a survey within the FE sector every year. We have done that for over 2 decades, but last year was slightly different. Obviously, the pandemic had a huge impact to everybody. One of the things that it impacted in terms of the survey was that it was much harder to get hold of people. So we did it differently last year. We did a much more detailed survey, but we only surveyed our existing customers. That gave us an opportunity to talk with a bit more trust, to ask some more detailed questions, and that's given us really quite a rich wealth of information that we can share. We have published the full survey, and that has been being picked up by a number of news outlets, including FE News. FE News have run a summary story on that already, but it's worth keeping an eye out because in, I think, December, they will be running a much more detailed survey with observations from our CEO and from other outlets. So it's been a real success, this survey, and as I say, yielded some interesting information. In terms of the respondents, we have customers across the UK. You can see that we have spoken to quite a broad cross-section geographically, job function, seniority, but 76% of our correspondents were FE colleges. We have some sixth form colleges. We've spoken to some universities and academy trusts as well. Some of our customers are joining us today. Some of you will perhaps be new to Bluecube, but working within the FE sector. And we hope that you'll find the next 15 minutes or so an enlightening time, and you'll get something from it. So diving into the survey, my aim for this section is just to highlight, as I say, some of the key facts. We will also be sending you a copy of the survey, a copy of this webinar afterwards, or if you're joining us and watching the recording, hopefully you will have already received your survey. So the first questions we talked about were around funding. As I say, I've worked with FE colleges for over 10 years now, and unfortunately, funding is a hot topic every year within the FE sector. And unfortunately, FE tends to be the poorer cousin to universities and to other types of education when it comes to funding. And no surprises really that when we ask questions around, did you feel there was sufficient funding available? Did you feel the government supported learners as well as funding education establishments? 63% of our correspondents said no. There was an interesting few comments around additional areas of funding. So there was a lot of news about new funding becoming available, but what we saw frequently as comments coming through was, yes, there was new funding, but a lot of it was also attached to match funding restrictions. And obviously during the pandemic, that wasn't a very easy thing to adapt to. So I think in the press, we saw a lot of stories saying this funding is there, but the reality from a lot of our correspondents was that it became very, very difficult to access. There were some silver linings there, and at the end of this, I'll allude to some of those that we've seen coming through. In terms of challenges and solutions, we spoke to our correspondents and said, okay, so from that point when the government said you've got to go home, you've got to work from home, what did you what biggest challenges did you see? And some of the things, some of the sort of percentages to draw out here were over 61% of our correspondents said actually from day one there were complications with remote access across the college, just within the finance team, but actually just working generally, support teams found that it was difficult to access systems. 52% experienced a severe reduction in work during the first few months of the pandemic, and I think that was really relating to, yes, a change in need, because things did slow down almost to a stop to begin with, but also just in inability to work. So no surprises, I guess, that initial lockdown, people being sent home, had a huge impact on change. When we asked, actually now reflecting forward, how do you feel the work conditions are? I think the most startling statistic was 77% of our correspondents said that they can now work from home with no difficulty. So throughout all of those initial challenges, actually, the majority were saying, yeah, everything has now smoothed out. The interesting sort of smaller numbers there, where we were saying, 4% found they can't work effectively. We also asked for additional commentary, and I have to say I offer sympathy to these people, because the majority were saying it's where you've got young children and you're trying to balance the needs of home life and work life at the same time, and I can reflect on that. I mean, I can remember having to deal with teaching lessons and telling stories about Peppa Pig while diving in between meetings. So yes, there is that added extra element when working from home. So we moved into, well, how has your working environment changed? Where are you now? So another high percentage of people, 65% of people saying that that their teams did work remotely in the last 12 months. 34% saying it was a mix. So there was no one saying that in the last 12 months the team solely worked in the office, and I think that was a reflection of the restrictions as much as anything else. What I found telling, which shows that remote working is very much here to stay, and this is a permanent change, is this statistic. So yes, 31% of respondents said that they were predominantly working in the office, but another 31% said they were operating a more of a mix, 50-50 office at home, and the highest, 38%, said that their primary work location is home. So yeah, my conclusion there is remote working, hybrid working is very much here to stay. And you'll see as we move into talking about technology that that's had a huge impact on what colleges have done to adapt to these changes. So let's look at the positives. It's very easy to focus on all of the negatives that came about as a pandemic, but we really wanted to look at where it's been a change for a force of positive change. So the most interesting sort of anecdotal one was 23% of our respondents said that they experienced less ad hoc requests. There were some quite funny and interesting additional comments to this, which I would love to be able to share with you. But in general, I think there was a strong feeling that being at home and not being in the finance office, where people can easily come and find you, knock on the door and say, oh, I know you're busy, but can I just, and the ability to just not be there was definitely seen as a huge positive. Though I also think, as we'll look at some of the other percentages, that change was as a result of a better change in working. What I mean by that, so 41% of people said that there was a positive impact by increasing processes through automation or semi-automated processes. So to look into that in more detail, these were customers of ours where we've helped them to devolve account processes out. So by that I mean budget holders raising purchase orders, approving purchase orders, into raising expenses claims, and all of that being done as workflow outside of the finance team. So the finance team don't have to key those purchase orders in, send them out to the suppliers. All of that's done semi-automatically. And then fully automated was we're looking at reporting. So what was previously the case where people were either emailing or even compiling paper reports and distributing them physically, when that was no longer possible, we looked at how can reporting solutions distribute those reports without the finance team needing to get involved. So 41% saw that as a marked improvement. And again, perhaps not surprising, with those changes in place, with the reduction in distractions, certainly from work people, not children and pets notwithstanding, 82% of our correspondents said that they felt they worked more efficiently outside of the office with fewer distractions. So this is clearly indicating an evolution, which is part of the digital transformation that the government was driving for anyway. And we asked a lot of questions around those government objectives and how they're being met, and 77% of correspondents said that actually the pandemic forced them to speed up responding to these changes, to speed up digitization and bring through changes that had been planned to be actioned more immediately. I think where you can see the lower percentages there, what we saw from the additional comments was actually where people have said it slowed things down. It was in response to just the challenges found perhaps in a change that was already in the works, where people were setting meetings up, discussing with budget holders in person. Then suddenly everybody goes home, and that initial lockdown did cause things to slow down. But I think that's a small minority by comparison to that overall feeling of, yeah, we had to adapt, we had to change. We then asked a lot of questions about okay, so you've said work is more efficient, you've said you sped things up, so what did you do and how has that changed? Again, 78% of our correspondents said that they did initially have to devote more time to implementing new processes. So that swallowed up a lot of that efficiency to begin with. 43% said that they then had to liaise less with colleges, with other colleagues. So we saw the immediate balance there being achieved from these processes being implemented. But taking a step back, what I find interesting looking at the average day changes, if you look at the right hand side of this infographic, you look at the lighter blues. This is where those 78% of people are saying, yeah, we had to invest more time around these areas. So we had to look at ways to improve data entry. We had to look at ways to improve budget management, forecasting. And yeah, there's a huge chunk of people saying they did have to spend more time liaising with colleagues to put processes in place. But once those changes have been made, if we look at the left-hand side of the screen, these darker blue sections where people were saying they are spending much less time on these areas, these are permanent changes. So yes, 43% of people say actually we don't get those interruptions from other staff. That's huge. A similarly large chunk of people spending less time delivering and collating budget reports, less time doing data entry, and these changes will be permanent. They will be there year on year going forwards. So it's a clear sign that certainly for those of you that are joining us that aren't BlueCube customers now, but are thinking perhaps we need to make some more changes, there is definitely benefits to be had from digitization, from automation. And yes, it does take an investment of time, but the benefits on the other side are exponential. So looking ahead to the future, then we asked a number of questions around what people have already seen and what they're looking ahead in terms of changes to achieve. And we got some fascinating responses back. And again, I'm going to draw some highlights here, but certainly I think this is an area where I would encourage you to look at the report in detail, because there's some great responses. 20% of staff said that they were becoming more strategic and more consultative. And I've heard some fantastic stories from our customers here where this is widening their job role and their ability to deliver more value across the organization, because they're spending less time collating those budget reports, processing data. It's giving them an ability to actively get engaged and involved and use the skills that they have around the college. So I think people sadly often forget that finance people aren't there to just process invoices. Most qualified finance people are very good at data processing. They're very good at managing and collating data and analyzing it. Those skills are massively transferable across any organization. So what we've seen is people going out and saying, actually, we can help you manage that information, that data, whatever it is. We can help you build reports, and we can start analyzing and looking for efficiencies. And that gives finance people much more value within an organization, much more enjoyment within their own job role, and obviously that leads to better performance, better opportunities across the college. So again, if that's something that you haven't seen yet, I'd encourage you to start thinking about ways you can work with other departments around the college, and yeah, get out of the finance team. 65% of respondents have said that they've seen a marked increase in people wanting to work flexible hours, people being able to work flexible hours, and some real highlights here were people saying that they have been able to demonstrate that they can achieve the same productivity, the same job function, working flexibly, working lower hours. And in that position, that's given the college the opportunity to make either more use of people's time, as we've described, or simply enable them to work less hours. And effectively, that's like being given a pay rise. We know funding is limited. We know that colleges are struggling to recruit because of competitive pay, where they're not able to offer such higher salaries. But if they're able to offer salaries and say, look, if you can do your work in 4 days a week instead of 5, we'll still pay you the same amount, that then becomes really very attractive. Perhaps there might be some FDs thinking we don't want to make that public across your organisation, but certainly we've seen some really positive stories there. 55% of respondents have said that it's also given them an opportunity to see increases in revenue streams. And so what we've seen here is, because of the availability of remote delivery, where colleges were forced to find ways of continuing to deliver learning where delivering it in person wasn't available, it's also given them the ability to adapt, to be able to engage with other types of learners, more widely spaced out geographically, to engage with people that are already working in business and to engage with those businesses themselves. So they're offering new courses, and they're offering courses to be delivered in a different way. Again, there's some more detail in the report if you want to see that, but it's certainly showing that actually FE colleges have been able to demonstrate that they are fleet of foot and can adapt to different circumstances. So that's a quick run through the survey itself. As I say, the full survey is available to you, and do have a look at FE Week and look at some of the stories that are coming through, because this has really been picked up as an interesting report. There were a couple of success stories that I wanted to share also of customers that we've worked with during the pandemic. We've seen some really positive changes come through in the last 18 months, and I think it's worth celebrating and highlighting a couple of those. One of them was working with Leicester College. So Leicester College were a long-standing user of the Bluecube finance system. They had already made plans to move from their on-premise environments to the Bluecube cloud environment, but the plan had been to do that more around April, May of last year, and then the news was announced that colleges would be locking down and people were being sent home, and they embraced that change. So they could have gone one of two ways. They could have seen that as a reason to say, okay, we'll have to put everything on hold, but actually they took the decision, well, this just means we bring things forward. So they contacted us, we put some meetings in place, and we were able to help them migrate to the cloud within a 24-hour window from talking about bringing that forward to going through testing, and everybody then the following day going home and being able to work. And they felt that was one of the most effective decisions that they took early on in that lockdown, and it meant that there was no disruption for them for remote working. So it was a great decision that they took. Great to be able to help them make that move, and it shows that it's easy to become afraid of making change, but actually work through it, make a plan, and it can be an incredible success. Another of our customers, the University of Wales, so they have a huge volume of invoices that they process on a monthly basis, and still struggling with suppliers sending those invoices through physically and through email. And in the early stages of the pandemic, that meant things had to slow down. So we worked with them to develop a fully automated accounts payable solution from order out to supplier for the invoice to come back. That's then sent to an automatic email inbox where software is reading that invoice, matching to the order, and preparing that invoice for payment without the need for that to be picked up by any human interaction. And they think that's going to save a huge amount of time in terms of input from within the finance team and other key stakeholders around the university. So we had a great opportunity to work with them to develop that solution, and I think that's something that we will see many more of our customers seeking to implement over the next year. So thank you for joining me this morning. I hope you've enjoyed this quick walk through the survey. As I say, there's plenty more to see from there. If you've joined us late, we will be sending you a copy of this webinar recording, or you're very welcome to share that with others. We will send you a copy of the report. If there's anything more you want to know about Bluecube, we would welcome you getting in touch. You can go to the website bluecube.co.uk to find out more about the software itself, or just get in touch with me. So my name again, Nicky Wilkins. Head up the customer engagement team. If you are an existing customer of ours and you want to know more, or if you're new to Bluecube, then please do drop me a line. I'd be very happy to talk. Thank you for joining us today.